welcome back for a solo episode of Straight from the Drafts. In my last solo episode, I said that I would talk through some moments of self-trust in my own story, in my own life, in an upcoming episode. So here we are, because I absolutely love hearing the stories of self-trust from our guests on the podcast. But I haven't necessarily shared my own self-trust stories. But when I was kind of thinking about which moment shall I share with you on today's episode, it got me thinking, and I just wanted to call something out first. I have very much been in a self-trust crisis over the past year, but I am also noticing this for so many business owners and really seeing it as a common theme. And so perhaps I'm kind of thinking, not only are we in potentially a trust recession in the online space, I'm seeing that phrase being bandied around a lot, I also think maybe we're in a self-trust recession. It really feels as though we're outsourcing our decision making and therefore our self-trust more than ever right now. And there's a couple of ways that I see this show up for business owners, and I would love to know if any of this resonates with you. So first of all, using AI. Now, I'm not against AI in its entirety. I think it does have its uses and could be incredible in so many industries. Unfortunately, I do think it is being used in a way that is very unhelpful and in many cases dangerous. And when it comes to how we use it as founders, I also think it can be harmful when we outsource our humanness to it. And by that, I mean our ability to think, to problem solve, to create. I think all of that is a huge part of what makes us human, and also a really important way in which we express ourselves and learn about ourselves. So when we outsource that to AI, we're kind of saying that we think the robots will do a better job than we will, or that we don't trust ourselves to make those decisions unaided. Second of all, the online space is really fucking loud. We need to remember how many brilliant and successful businesses were built in the years before social media existed. Now, this digital age that we're in presents an incredible opportunity. It gives us lower barriers to build a business, access to information and inspiration that previously would have only been available to people with the right connections or certain educational levels of wealth. But it also means that we are bombarded with opinions, information, and adverts hundreds, if not thousands of times every single day. We'll see courses that we're being told that we absolutely need, ways of working which we're being told we should follow, coaches we should work with because they have the secrets to fast track our success. And if we don't invest, do we even want it enough? And hearing about other people's expertise and seeing other people's success makes us question our own. Now, a decade ago, we'd potentially be aware of the same knowledge gaps, but I'm sure we'd be much more inclined to just get stuck in and figure it out for ourselves and have the self-trust to do that. But it's only natural when we're being bombarded with the narrative that we don't know enough that we're going to start believing it and start internalizing that. And reflecting on this and seeing it in so many other people has allowed me to kind of give myself some grace for the fact that I am having my own self-trust crisis right now. Because why do I think I'm immune to it? I've spent the last 4 years working in social media, so I am online a lot. I am consuming a lot of that kind of content. And so when I was thinking about what to share in today's episode, I really wanted to reflect on a time before I allowed all of that noise to get into my head and think about the huge milestones and moments of self-trust that I've had over the years, which really were self-trust moments. Like, they had very little influence from anyone else. And the first thing that came to mind was back when I was deciding what to do after leaving school. So this is quite a long time ago. My school were very pro-university. They focused really heavily on that traditional path of A-levels, university, career. And I will unfortunately admit to you that I was part of the gifted and talented group at school, which I don't know if everyone's school had this or if it was just certain schools, but what the fuck was that about? I assume the intention behind it was to be supportive to, certain individuals, but I really feel like it was just added pressure for the kids that school expected to do well on their exams. And I really remember how openly, did not try to hide it, openly disappointed the gifted and talented tutors were for our year group, because I can't remember, but I don't think anyone in the cohort wanted to go to Oxford or Cambridge, and I don't think we had a huge number of people going into medicine either, and they were the kind of two markers of success for the gifted and talented cohort. So my school knew absolutely nothing of apprenticeships or internships, or what they did know was they almost looked down on them as an option for people who didn't do well rather than an option for everyone. So I put in hours of research and I found a path which I was excited about, which was a school leaver programme, which essentially meant that I would do a mix of work and studying. Now, I didn't go down this route because I was worried about my exam results, although I was very stressy at my A-levels. I knew that I would do well enough to get into a uni, but I think I was just past the point of wanting to learn more at this point. I wanted to learn, but in a practical way and not in a classroom setting. So I would still get a degree by doing this, but I wouldn't go to uni full time. For the first 3 years, I pretty much worked most of the year and then only went into uni full time in year 4, where I did my final exams, my dissertation and all that jazz. So this was a time that I really feel I took the decision into my own hands and I backed myself. I even created a booklet with all of my research for the gifted and talented tutors to educate them on these options in case a future student was interested in the years after I left. And that felt so good, and the decision felt really clear, and I did look at so many options, don't get me wrong, I didn't go straight into this one school leaver programme. There were a few similar opportunities around at the time and I kind of worked out which one I was most excited about. I applied for them all, but it felt good to be so ballsy and do something different. So I did do those 4 years. I went and got my degree, but I was actually really unhappy in the job itself. I have talked about this a little bit in the past, maybe episode 3 is quite an early episode where I talk about my corporate background. It was super intense and my mindset was not great at this point in my life, so I just knew that this was not the career that I wanted to stay in, and also not a career I could stay in if I kind of cared about my sanity and my mental health, if I'm being honest. I was not in a good place. So at this point, I had done 12 out of 15 professional exams to become a qualified accountant. I was already time qualified before I went to uni. So all I needed to do was stay 1 more year after graduating to complete those final exams. However, I chose to leave, and I chose to leave way before I went to uni, so I kind of went away for that final year knowing that I wasn't really going to come back. And so many people said to me, it's just a year, you might as well get that qualification under your belt so that you've got it to fall back on if you change your mind. But I knew that that was never going to be a backup option for me. If I did need a backup option, I would find something else. It was never going to be coming back to accounting and doing a career which made me cry myself to sleep. I was absolutely sure of that. And I knew that a year was a long time to be miserable. So what I did during that 4th year while we were away at university, I paid to do like an online remote learning diploma. So that was in digital marketing. I'd kind of done some research about what I thought I might enjoy and what kind of took my interest, and I settled on digital marketing. So I sat that exam at the end of my first term when I came home for the Christmas holidays sometime in December. So this was still months before graduating, and I started applying for jobs, just like all the other final year students were doing. So not the other school leavers around me, not my friends. They were simply going back to work, following the plan, staying for that 5th year and completing their exams. But I was kind of acting like a normal student, not someone who already had employment lined up and had been working for a few years. So when graduation rolled around, I handed in my notice at the firm where I had been training for the last few years. I had a digital marketing job lined up, and that's kind of the start of the career path that I'm on now. Now, I remember feeling the pressure of applying for those jobs. I didn't want to quit with no plan, and I kind of wanted to prove to people who were telling me not to do it that it was all going to work out. But I didn't necessarily question the decision. I put in the time, and I approached those job applications a bit like I'd done with uni applications, with that sort of naivety of, so what if my degree and my experience is in accounting? I'll just prove that I'm interested in marketing, and I'll just put myself out there like every other grad is doing. You know, there'll be people graduating with geography degrees applying for marketing jobs. Same difference. So I'd done my diploma. I also, in that final year, joined Marketing Society at uni for that final year. We'd never really been involved with uni life and societies before that. And I also found and completed a 3-day training academy with the Creative Data Academy, I think it was called. So I did that around April time, and I just made it work. I found opportunities, I said yes, I put myself in the rooms that I needed to put myself in to give me the best chance. And I do actually kind of miss some of that naivety potentially and just that go-getter attitude. And as I'm recording this episode, it's almost healing to look back and know that that was me. And it's weirdly motivating for me to want to get some of that back after such a slumpy year. And the maddest thing about these 2 milestones so far is I could sit here and tell you like, oh, it felt so scary leaving my career or going down a different route to all my friends in 6th form. But it didn't. I was aware that I was going down this different path, but I wasn't scared about that. I felt so self-assured in those decisions and actually just really excited about them. Every time someone questioned me, I was just like, nope, I got this. And I did think like, oh, what if? And I wonder how it's all going to turn out. But very much through a lens of excitement and not fear. So I just kind of wanted to add that context, because when I say that I've been struggling with my self-trust for the last year, this is the extreme that I've been used to and been so lucky to have. I'm so used to having this gut instinct and confidence in my decisions and being very like blinkers on, let's just make it happen. So now having this uncertainty and spending the last year fannying about, for lack of a better phrase, is so frustrating and actually feels a little bit sad to reflect on, because I'm like, what's happened? Where has that past nail gone? So let's skip ahead a few years and I'll get into my third and final self-trust story that I want to share with you today, which is when I left my last employed role to go all in on the business. So we're talking 2023 here. Actually, first, let's go back to 2022. So first, I dropped down to 4 days a week at the agency that I was working for at the time. But then dropping my hours down further wasn't really an option, and I kind of needed a bit more time in my week to focus on Social by Neo. And if I'm being honest, as much as I liked that job quite a lot, I had friends there, the actual job was relatively interesting, I felt the pressure, and the senior leadership team low-key pissed me off, I'll be honest. I was always good at my job in the sense of, I would do a good job and try hard, but I just don't think I was good at being employed. And around this time, I could very much feel the lack of care from the senior leadership team about the rest of the team. Morale was quite shaky, and fewer and fewer people were coming into the office. The team vibe was lacking, and it was all just feeling a bit meh. So I then took a role with a startup. It was pretty much just me and the founder, with some support from their family members as well. And I did that for 3 days a week while continuing to build Social by Neo. So I was no longer employed by a corporate space. It was just this 3 days a week role, and then also running Social by Neo. And after 6 months of juggling the two things, I went full time. So this was a bit more of a tricky decision, but not actually because of worrying about finances or the business generally, but because it was such a tiny team and I was friends with the founder, I was really scared of letting them down. And I guess in a way I did let them down, and they took it badly. Their initial response was very understanding, because their previous employer had basically had the same conversation with them when they decided to build their startup, and they were like, I totally get it. I did the same in your shoes, and my boss was really supportive, so I'm very grateful for that. And of course I get it, like, this is your baby, I'm going to be supportive as well. But it was probably only like an hour later that things turned sour. I served out my notice period with very little communication between the two of us. Even though they lived locally and we normally spoke like pretty much every day, we didn't really communicate in that final month, other than sharing things that I needed to share. But I, couldn't ever get a meeting in with them or speak to them. Even kind of following that initial conversation, I wanted to chat properly about how I could continue supporting them without finishing completely. But it was just never an option. They just didn't want to talk about it. So that was pretty shit. It was a pretty crappy ending to employed life, but that was almost 3 years ago now, and I know it was the right thing to do, because I essentially had a choice of helping someone else to build their dream or giving myself a chance to build my own. And I really do think that if you're faced with those options and the opportunity arises, you've got to choose yourself. You can always go back to helping someone else, but there are few times in life where you kind of are faced with a real chance to do something for yourself, and for me that was one of them. So that final milestone was probably the hardest of the three from a people-pleasing perspective, but again, I was very sure of the decision and no regrets, And while I'm listening to these words come out of my mouth and I'm sharing all of this with you, I'm kind of realising, I need to remember who the fuck I am, don't I? I need to start operating like the Neo who made these ballsy decisions without any doubts, and really start seeing the excitement in the what if again. And maybe you need that reminder too. Maybe you can look back at younger you, or even just you of a couple of years ago when you first started your business, and be proud of that person. And try and remember the confidence that that person had before the online noise tried to quieten that down. And so to end today's episode, I want to share a quote which I played over and over and over, and sort of emotionally, happy tears, all the feelings cried to this quote when I left the agency job, when I was going freelance to start my chapter of self-employment. And you may know it. It's from the film Night at the Museum, and it's a conversation between Ben Stiller's character and Robin Williams. And I'm actually going to try and play it for you.
I have no idea what I'm going to do tomorrow. How exciting.
It's so good. And I would love for you to share this podcast with someone if you enjoyed today's episode, so that we can all start rebuilding the self-trust that we've lost. And I really hope you have a gorgeous rest of your day, gorgeous rest of your week, and I will speak to you next Wednesday.